A Reddit user recounted a night in their life when they had a terrifying encounter with a man behaving unnervingly. Late one night, while walking home from work, the user noticed a man far down the street who was staring at the sky and moving strangely, almost dancing. As the user got closer, they realized that the man had an exaggerated, unnatural smile plastered across his face. He kept glancing at the user and, without a word, started moving towards them in an erratic, jerky fashion. The user crossed the street to avoid him, but the man followed, grinning all the while. The encounter lasted until the user broke into a sprint and finally lost him, never to see the smiling man again. To this day, the user has no idea what the man's intentions were. In the 1950s, a babysitter was looking after a child one night when the phone rang. The voice on the other end kept asking, "Have you checked on the children?" Thinking it was a prank call, the babysitter ignored it. After several more calls with the same creepy message, she decided to call the police. The police advised her to remain calm and said they would trace the next call. After the next call came, the police called back immediately, urging her to leave the house. The call was coming from inside the house. The babysitter grabbed the child and fled, only to find that an intruder had been hiding in the home, likely watching them the entire time.
A woman living alone began hearing footsteps above her ceiling, though she was certain no one else was in the house. These strange noises occurred for several nights, often waking her up in the early hours. Finally, one evening, she called a friend to come over and help her investigate. As they ventured into the attic, they discovered an old blanket, some empty food wrappers, and a makeshift bed. Someone had been living in her attic for days, watching her from above while she slept, but had slipped out before they could catch him.
The Vanishing Hitchhiker. A taxi driver in Chicago recalled one cold night when he picked up a young woman on the side of the road, who asked him to drive her home. She gave him an address, and he noticed how quiet she was during the drive. When they arrived, she handed him an old coin as payment and slipped out of the car before he could say anything. Curious, he knocked on the door of the house she had entered to ask about the odd fare. The elderly woman who answered told him that the girl he described was her daughter, but she had died in an accident many years before. Shaken, the driver realized the address had led him to a graveyard near the house, where he found her grave.
A young woman was staying home alone one night when she noticed someone standing outside, looking through her window. The figure was motionless, simply staring. She screamed and called the police. But by the time they arrived, the man was gone. The police officer suggested she might have been seeing a reflection from the TV or something harmless. Later, as she was getting ready for bed, she received a text from her brother that read, "I'm outside. Let me in." She rushed to the door to find no one there. When her brother finally arrived home hours later, he insisted he hadn't sent the message. She never figured out who sent it or who had been outside that night.